Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm here in the studio with Nina Coleman, Sandy Neck Beach Park Manager. Nina, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Now, the latest news from Sandy Neck has to do with the town of Barnstable's purchase of property out on the tip. Tell me what was behind this purchase.
It was a very complicated purchase. There was quite a large property, 14-plus acres, that had been up for dispute about who owned it for many years, and there was a petition through the courts. And that put it out for sale, which was in the paper quite a bit. A lot of people were talking about it. Clearly, it's the type of property that needs to be acquired for open space and be preserved and not in the hands of a private developer. So the town rallied, and we just had the vote last Thursday night, as you know, Laura, for the purchase of that property. So the funds have been secured through the town council.
Now, what's the importance of saving this piece of land? And some people might not know there's sort of a little cottage colony on the tip of Sandy Neck, and this piece of land was near that colony.
Yeah, it's to the north of our cottage colony. It's like I said, it's quite a large chunk of land comprised mostly of dunes, so just open space, wild lands, never been developed. It has a lot of historical value, cultural value, vista value. It's the backdrop to our lighthouse. And then the front of the property is oceanfront, which of course makes a lot of people curious when you have a piece of property of that size with oceanfront, essentially out on the market. And so it has a lot of values and importance to this town and to the character of our town. But it also has quite a bit of wildlife and conservation values as well. And Sandy Neck, as you know, is designated an area of critical environmental concern for every reason that you can think of, including endangered species habitat, and this property had all of those attributes. So it was great to see it preserved. It was a unanimous vote by the council. Everybody knows how important it is that we save these properties, and so I look forward to managing it now that it's in town hands.
So that's sort of the new news from Sandy Neck. We went right into the new news, and now just giving people sort of an overview of Sandy Neck, because there's really nothing else like Sandy Neck on Cape Cod. This is such a unique environment.
It is. Sandy Neck is an amazing piece of property, contiguous conservation lands. If you include the Great Marsh, it's about 4,300 acres. It's very unusual for a property of this size to be town-owned. Usually when you see chunks of land of this magnitude and this value, it's state or federal. So it's a barrier beach. I call it she. So she's a barrier beach, 6.5 miles long, and it has the Great Marsh behind it, the second largest marsh in Massachusetts. And as you know, we have those cottages on there with historic value, and then we have 8 endangered plants and animals associated with it. So the reason it has all those endangered animals is it's such an unusual landscape. There's not much of that left on the East Coast. So you have, this dune habitat and these little tiny wetlands at the base of the dunes, and very unique, niche-y sort of habitat, and that's what makes it so fascinating and beautiful. And also, like I said, has a myriad of wildlife associated with it because of its uniqueness.
Now, the wildlife there is really extraordinary, and if I'm not mistaken, you've had a number of snowy owls over the past couple of years.
Yeah, in the winter, we have snowy owls coming through, not last winter, but the winter before was a banner year for the Cape in general, but we had many, many snowies coming through Sandy Neck. This last winter, we had 2 resident owls, and those guys are overwintering. It's kind of tundra-like out there in the dead of the winter, and that's what they're looking for. So they're generally out pretty far, out towards the point. In fact, one of our snowy owls this winter was always to be found along the dunes of this property we just purchased. It was his favorite or her favorite spot to perch. So I think it's just really cool that that there's that connection. So many people love the owls and the landscape out there, and that preservation is going to continue.
So the town purchased the owl's favorite property, so that's a nice part of the story. Now, what are some of the bigger animals that people might see out there? People can, of course, walk. They can hike through the trails of Sandy Neck. And what might they see?
Well, generally, Sandy Neck is really wonderful for tracking. It's like being in fresh snow for people who get out in the winter, and you suddenly realize how much animal activity is going on when you go out after fresh snow, and likewise the sand is giving up those mysteries, and you can see a lot of track, a lot of coyote are on Sandy Neck, putting down quite a bit of track as they do. There's a healthy deer population out there, and then kind of what you would expect: the raccoons, the skunks. We have otter as well, which is a really fun track. And then, of course, our diamondback terrapin population live in the marsh year-round and come up into the dunes to nest. And this time of year, if you get it just right, you might see one of those animals crawling past you looking for a good nesting spot.
Now, this is a very popular area for fishing, of course, and for people off-roading and going out there and with their fishing poles and maybe spending a weekend or a week out there. How does that activity affect the property, and why do people come to Sandy Neck, and why is it so popular for that?
Well, certainly the Sandy Neck is known for the off-road vehicle recreational opportunity, and it's very busy, but it's very busy for a brief part of the year. Really, July and August is when we have the most vehicles out there, and they are sort of held to one area because the piping plover, as you know, closes portions of the beach. So there's a lot of humanity kind of in a tight little spot, and we specifically, in the state and the federal government so forth, has designed that activity is to have the least impact on the landscape and on the wildlife. So those vehicles are in the portion of beach where we don't have much going on in terms of wildlife. In other words, they're out of the intertidal zone, and they're away from the dunes. So you have a lot going on in that section of beach. I always challenge folks to get into the trails. That's really where Sandy Neck shows her uniqueness, and you have to hike it. Yes, I know you have to hike up in there, but that's another big activity year round. And people, are bird watching. There's a tent camping area back there, and just enjoying a more of a passive recreation opportunity out there. So there's a lot going on. And then, of course, we have the 50-plus cottages and all those folks coming and going as well. So it's a busy beach. We really try to always put the best interest of the land and balance that with the recreation that goes on out there.
Now, you mentioned the piping plovers. I know every year it's different as to how many nest, when the chicks fledge. What happened this year?
This year we're doing quite well with our plovers. We have 40 nests. We have had some decent success. The season is obviously not over, so I can't give you final numbers, but we're having success with fledging. We look at it as how many of the babies, the juveniles, actually get off the ground, fly, and that is a success rate per pair. So we're doing fairly well, getting a lot of those chicks fledged, and there was, like I said, 40 nests, and the closest nest, or the area that we had to close at, is just east of Trail 2. So, that it could be more beach. Certainly folks, particularly in very busy times of the year, would rather have more beach. I would rather have more beach, but it's at 1.7, 1.8, right around there, and I think we're doing pretty good. I mean, we're accommodating everybody, and we're also able to protect the birds, and that's really the balancing act that is challenging. But this year it seems to be going really well.
And 40 sounds like an awful lot of nests, because I know in past years we've talked about there might be one or something like that. So is 40 a record?
No, it's usually, it's like the one that really puts its nest down in the awkward spot. That's the one you hear about, okay? So we actually had a nest like that at 0.5 miles. So that nest was due the 3rd of July. They always seem to pick just the perfect time, right? So we had a nest that would have been that one that would have been the talk of the town. Unfortunately, that nest, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, that nest was predated by coyote, and so the 4th of July we had quite a bit more beach than that. But no, 40 nests is about average for us. The majority of the nests are out in the Little Neck area, again, where this 14-acre parcel is, so out past Trail 6, kind of between Trail 6 and the point is where the vast majority of our nests are. Very high density plover and tern nesting going out in that area.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm talking to Nina Coleman, who is the Sandy Neck Beach Park Manager. We've been talking about the plovers, and everyone usually is very interested in what the plovers are doing every year. But a big story at Sandy Neck this past winter was the erosion. Tell me what's been done with that. I know there was an emergency order that the town council had to execute earlier this spring. What's going on with the erosion problem?
Yeah, the erosion problem is another big challenge that we've been dealing with for the last 2.5 years. We started with Storm Nemo in 2013. That was our first really big hit that came out of the north. And since then, we've had 2 more tough winters, most notably this last winter that all of us Cape Codders survived. We know it was extremely stormy, and I can tell you that all those storms came out of the north, and that is the hardest one because it comes straight onto our beach. Likewise with Sandwich, you hear a lot about Sandwich. It's the same coastline, same issues, and so we did lose quite a bit of beach at Sandy Neck this winter. We have been placing sand in front of the parking lot to ensure that we don't lose that infrastructure for the last 2 years. And this February 2015, we did, as you say, Laura, had to get emergency sand out there, and the town council was kind enough to allocate $50,000 in order to do that as quickly as possible. And we didn't lose any parking, but certainly at this point, just to be up to date, we're about $250,000 of sand that we've put on the beach just to survive the last 2 winters.
And going forward, I know you've been talking about what to do because it's not like this erosion is going to just stop magically. This will continue on. So for the future, what kinds of things are you thinking about here?
Well, it's a really, really complex topic. And we all know that we're heading in a bad direction with really all, the whole coastline. And then, you got to tease apart, are we in a very funny weather pattern right now where everything is coming out of the north? Are we at the worst of the worst, or is this the new normal? And those are questions we can't answer. So we do have to look at it as if this is what we're up against. There are solutions. None of them are cheap, and none of them are popular. And certainly, we need professional guidance from engineers to help us decide what the best route is for the town. We don't want to keep putting sand on the beach and letting it go. That seems like a waste of money. It is one option. So where we're at right now is we did apply for a coastal zone management grant, coastal resiliency grant. We should learn soon if we have acquired that grant. We asked for $200,000 in funding for 4 things. So this would fund 4 things. The first would be an alternative analysis. So what are the choices? What are the choices that the town has? Just lay them out there, the cost of those, approximate cost of those choices. And then the second part of that is bringing those choices or those solutions to the public, getting the public feedback. So public outreach is the second part of that piece. And then once the solution has been determined to be the best one, none of them are going to be perfect, but what is the best course of action? That solution then needs design and permitting, and this grant would also cover that portion of the project. And then we would then start looking for funding for actual implementation of the ultimate solution.
And it's the parking lot, I guess, is the first major problem in terms of, I know I've heard you speak in the past of, does a portion of that need to be abandoned? That's sort of the maybe thought of as an extreme thing, but maybe it's also perhaps one of the easier things you can do.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the parking lot area. That is correct. I should be clear, because the shoreline is receding, and most of Sandy Neck is undeveloped, so it recedes. It's not great, but that's what's happening there. But obviously, we have this line with the parking lot. There are a number of solutions. Abandoning the parking lot, I don't think would be a viable solution. We don't want to lose. That's one of the goals, is not to lose parking. It's already not big enough, and we already know that we can't make it any bigger because of the regulatory constraints. So that is, at least from my perspective, one of the goals, is how do we achieve the same amount of access for people, and have it be a more viable situation up there where we're not sort of always hanging on the edge of the parking lot surviving. So we're just going to have to see where this goes. Like I said, we should know about the grant. If we don't get the grant, then we will look to our own funding for this project, because obviously it needs to be addressed. Now's the time. So we will pursue this no matter what. But fingers crossed on that $200,000 from the state.
It's an ongoing issue, no easy answers on the erosion problem. And in the final couple of minutes we have left, how is the summer going this year? Are your numbers up, down, about the same from last year? How's the summer going down there?
Yeah, it's a busy summer. We're speaking right after the 4th of July, which is always a huge weekend on the Cape and on Sandy Neck. Numbers appear to be about the same as last year, but last year was a record-breaking year. So I would say that we're doing quite well. A lot of people are choosing to purchase off-road stickers, are choosing to come to our beach, our public beach, purchase our merchandise. I mean, it's all sort of rolling along quite nicely right now. And the weather keeps coming up beautiful every weekend, and that also obviously is a draw for folks down at Sandy Neck. So
absolutely, it's another big season at Sandy Neck and the beach, as you mentioned. It's an enterprise account. You use your fees and the sales of things down there to pay for actually everything that goes on at the beach.
That's correct, yeah. All the user fees go back into the program, all the merchandise sales, et cetera, right back into the program. It funds our operating, our staff. It funds the new bathhouse, which we have debt on, and so it funds that every year. And it has been able thus far to fund addressing this erosion issue. So I think the enterprise account is healthy, thanks in part to the popularity of Sandy Neck, and folks are just they just love their beach. They really do. And there's people that have been out there generation after generation. And, we really love to see them come back every year. People are very passionate about Sandy Neck in the town of Barnstable here on the Cape. And unfortunately, we're out of time. I've been talking to Nina Coleman, Sandy Neck Beach Park Manager. Nina, thank you so much for being here with me today. That was my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.